So, Adriano, it's a real pleasure
Big pleasure, man.
to be here with you.
Big pleasure.
You know, one of my references as a journalist, for me, as an aspiring journalist who is following a path similar to yours, you know, following football, covering football in my country, and also giving coverage for Italian football, you know. So, yeah, it's a big pleasure to be here with you.
Pleasure, man.
This is the beautiful thing about football, about the world, you know. I'm an Australian and a Salvadoran with Italian roots, sitting down in Milano to talk about calcio. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. It's a big pleasure. Good to see you, and just always keep doing good work. It's a big, beautiful world, the football world.
There you go. So obviously we have a lot to discuss, you know, about Italian football at a club level, youth system problems, national team. So let's start with the club level.
Hmm.
You know, Italian teams have become a little bit more competitive recently in the last years.
Mm.
You know, Roma won the Conference League in 2022. Atalanta won the Europa League with Gasperini as well. But it's also true that no Italian side has lifted the Champions League in the last 15 years. So, what do you think our teams need to do, like to start getting a little bit more, like to actually be a tough candidate to
Mm.
win the Champions League? That's the major trophy in European football.
Obviously, there's a lot of talk in Italy and around the world by Italian Serie A fans about some of the issues we have, some areas we need to improve in. When you ask me that question, the first thing that comes to mind is we do need to start to bring through our youth. I think the youth development and the youth progression is the area we probably need the most reinforcement in. It's been a very long time that we haven't seen that new, young, emerging Italian star burst onto the scene. Federico Chiesa felt like he was one in the Euros a few years ago, but even he's still in his mid 20s then, later 20s now. We just haven't seen that consistent flow. And the thing that's alarming with that is at youth level, we actually perform quite well. Our national teams at youth level always make it very deep in tournaments. The most recent tournament as well,
We went to the semifinals.
we finished third,
We won the under 17 Euros with
won the
Canada.
under 17 Euros. So there is quality. It's not a problem of the development in those earlier stages. It's the progression,
Or the promotion from
the promotion, the transition to first team football in the big clubs in Serie A. So what do we pinpoint that to? Is that a lack of trust? Is that a lack of opportunity? Is it business? Is it agents? Agents are a big topic here as well. How are our young talent managed? Why are they not progressing to the big clubs? There are many issues, but I think the first thing we need to start with is looking at our youth transition and our progression. Because once we see the influx of youngsters that England, Germany, Spain have in France,
we have four
it
squads.
it's another level. And they could have squads of France, for example, could have an under 21 team of their best players that I feel could challenge our senior team right now. And that is a concern because that's for now. But if we roll this out another decade and we don't make change in that area, that's where we could potentially suffer longer term. So yes, we have a few issues to discuss and to address, but the youth transition for me is definitely the main area when we talk on the pitch that needs to change immediately.
There you go. So then we got teams like Bologna and Atalanta who are kind of being like a blueprint, like an example to follow. Because how can we explain the rise of these teams? You know, because they don't even have half the fan base or the historical weight as teams like Torino, Fiorentina,
Sí,
Genoa,
sí.
Sampdoria, and then you got Atalanta, who won a Europa League with Gasperini, who has been competing in Europe for more than 5 years in a row, who owns its own stadium too. And then we got Bologna, who I think is a very interesting project. Why? Because they made it to the Champions League a couple of seasons ago with Thiago Motta. But then under Vincenzo Italiano, they won the Coppa Italia. I think they can make an interesting run in the Europa League, and they can be an underdog or a dark horse for the Scudetto race. And it's very interesting because having two different coaches, selling top players like Zirze, Calafiori, and then they sell Dokima and Doye. So that means they are not a project that revolves around one single coach or one single star player. And how can we explain the rise of these teams, and how can we explain the stagnation of such traditional teams like Torino, to Genoa sides, Fiorentina?
I think the key word you mentioned was project, and a project that was committed to. Bologna, Sartori was a very important figure there. Atalanta, Gasperini, the consistency, the belief in the system, the belief in his project. It didn't matter who came and went on the pitch. He was able to replicate the same football. The project continued to grow. Look at Atalanta this season. You take out one of the protagonists of that project,
The main protagonist.
the protagonist, it is difficult to continue that. So I think we see when we compare Atalanta and Bologna to some of the clubs you mentioned, the Genoa, Torino, it's tough. Look, for the mid to lower tier clubs in the top flight in terms of performance on the pitch, history doesn't matter. History doesn't matter. It's a new time, it's a new era, and we're seeing some of the big clubs go through that as well. Juventus, the classic, the classic example for me at the moment that have really steered away from the strategy historically of what Juventus have been and stood for. And we've seen the results on the pitch not be anywhere near what we are accustomed to seeing over the years. Atalanta and Bologna have been in a position where they've been able to maximize the potential of their club by committing to a project. I feel for Fiorentina at the moment because they've had a great project under new ownership with big vision, stadium, some of the best training facilities in the country. They deserve more from what we're seeing on the pitch. I do hope, and I am confident they will eventually turn it around, but clearly they're going through a very tough period here. But look, Atalanta with Gasperini was the perfect case study for how to bring a, a renowned club to the heights that they've reached and consistently maintain that has been phenomenal to watch. And I think when we look at our big clubs comparatively to other big clubs in other leagues, knowing that we have now fallen behind financially, we can't shy away from that. It is the case. We need that same level of consistency and belief within the project and not make it up as we go, but we need to collectively commit to a bigger project by the league perspective, by the club's perspective, to ensure that we continue to match the other big leagues and the other big clubs. Otherwise, as one league, we'll fall behind. And if we fall behind as a league, the smaller clubs we're talking about here, they will not have the same ability to spend. Atalanta and Bologna will need to sell players to bring in money because we won't be generating revenue from other avenues. So it's look, I think Atalanta and Bologna are great in terms of what they were able to do and continue to do. But it doesn't mean because they've done it, the Genoas, the Torinos will be able to do that. You really need the right people in the right places at the right time and have belief in that this project will work. But obviously, belief comes with risk because if you do believe in a project and fully commit to it, if it doesn't work, you risk potential relegation. You risk taking a couple of steps back to go a few steps forward. So it's tough. Top flight football in any country is very tough, particularly here in Italy at the moment, given the situation, not as strong as we once were on the pitch. So I would like to see more of what we saw from Atalanta and Bologna amongst our very, very top clubs, because if our 4 or 5 big clubs are competing with the very big clubs around Europe, the league will prosper and all clubs will benefit.
There you go. So now, Serie A has become a league that sells more than advice. You know, it has lost like the prominence in the transfer market. What do you think has caused this shift, and what do you think our clubs have to do to gain, this thing to attract, the major football stars like it was back in the day?
Very complex question. Very good question, but very complex question because it's not that we can just flick a switch and tomorrow will be the 1990s, 2000s version of Serie A. There is a lot of work to do, but I've already said financially is the area where we are what we are at the moment as a result of what our product, what our brand offers. There's no questioning the fact that England and the English Premier League have completely dominated the international market when it comes to interest in a football league.
Or at least a player has a very genuine desire to join an Italian club. Like De Kettelare a couple of years ago with Milan,
Exactly.
Segrova with you.
But they're more a rarity today than they once were. Kids in the 1980s, 1990s, their dream was to play for Juventus, play for Milan, play for the big Serie A clubs. Napoli had Maradona. There was so much to love about our league and our game. And there is still so much to love, the culture, the history, the just everything that Italy and Serie A offers. Financially, it is a big problem. and it starts with marketing. It starts with growth, exposure, interest in a world that we live in today, where everything is accessible through the phone. So you don't even need to watch, let's say, the Premier League, but they market their product to potential fans, not just the hardcore fans, potential fans, so well that most people ask me, "Oh, you work in football, you do Champions League, you work in internationals, you do Serie A, but who's your Premier League team?" Common question I
It
get.
happens in El Salvador with Barcelona and Real Madrid. That's the first question they ask.
And I throw Barcelona and Real Madrid in there as well, because they do dominate. Barcelona and Real Madrid do dominate many markets, but typically, especially in Australia where I come from, it's very English focused, and it's always okay, cool. But who's your Premier League team? And I say, well, to be honest, I don't even watch much Premier League. The most Premier League exposure I get is when I'm pitch side covering a Premier League team in the Champions League. Always a pleasure, but I'm not someone who I was raised with Serie A, and well, that's sort of the question I pose. How do we change that? That takes a lot of time, but it takes rebranding our current brand. It takes repositioning ourselves in a very saturated market. Let's not forget, okay, we're talking football, but there is a lot of sport doing really good, really strong marketing, advertising. US sports, NBA, NFL. I'm sure there are many people around the world who have never sat there and watched a 48-minute NBA game, but could tell you the big dunk last night, who won, who's winning, because the access is so, it's just there. It's easy, it's accessible, it's ready, it's prominent. We don't necessarily pitch ourselves in a saturated market very strongly. And I think from my stance, I'm trying to change that in terms of what I can from an international broadcast sense by bringing fans from around the world closer to the cultural side of Italy, and then complementing that with our atmosphere, with our football, because our football still remains at a high level, despite the fact we don't have the best players in the world as we once did. So, look, I still think there's a lot of optimism to be had, but we do need to shift our gear and just understand where we're at and what it will take to put the steps in place to get back to hopefully where we once were.
And how much we gain and how much we lose with Italian top players like Tonali, Calafiori, Leoni to moving abroad to the Premier League, for example,
I don't like it. I don't like it for
for the
the
league
reasons I've just touched on, for Serie A, for image,
and for identity too,
for identity. Do I like it for their careers?
for the national team, let's say.
For the national team, do I like it? Yes, but I hesitate because, well, it's a difficult one, because at the moment they're going. Calafiori, a good example. Okay, he's playing well now at Arsenal, but you're going to a very strong Arsenal team, not guaranteed to be playing 90 minutes consistently. Okay, now he's found his feet, he's got himself in some good form. Chiesa, a classic example. He's not playing at Liverpool. He has to leave in January, Chiesa. He must leave, because Chiesa, for me, is a player that Italy need to have.
We need him so much.
Must. I can't believe when I see people online say, no, he's finished. I don't care. The current national team needs this player with that skill. Even if he shows that 1 minute in a playoff game, it could be the difference, because we do not possess that player. So I do like it for the sake of their development. But let's use Leone as an example. 18-year-old from Parma to Liverpool. Knee, very unfortunate. Not much we could do about that. But for me, that's too big a jump. That's too big a jump for a player to go to Liverpool. Yes, okay, Liverpool not playing so well now, but at the start of the season, Liverpool top favourites, very strong. Is he really going to play there? We need our young players playing 90 minutes top level. So if that was Torino, if that was Bologna, Atalanta, for me, I would have been more. Atalanta, Bologna with European competitions, for me, would have been the more strategic move. But perhaps he moves to Liverpool, a bigger fee, some more commission goes around, and that's where the business can start to interfere with the progression of our young players, as we touched on earlier. So, look, if the Premier League can offer them a better opportunity to become better players, sure. But are our players right now at the top level that they would demand 90 minutes for a top English club? Probably not. And that's why probably I would prefer them from our image side and for their development to be here in Italy. Calafiori after the Euros, he was the name. If he went from Bologna to Juve to Milan, it's great for our club. It's great for our clubs, great for the exposure, great for marketing. Use him. He's known. That's where I see more upside to utilize our stars, and we don't have 50 stars as we once did. We have limited stars at the moment. Let's use them. The other one is Donnarumma. For me, Donnarumma at Manchester City after Paris Saint-Germain, ma perché? Yes, okay, he'll do well, but he's the best goalkeeper in the world. Someone pay him. Inter need a goalkeeper. Juve need a goalkeeper. Magnan could leave Milan. Okay, probably doesn't go back, but this is where there's opportunity for me to think business strategy and not just on pitch football.
Exactly. And now moving on to the topic of the national team. I know we're in a very delicate situation with the national team
Very delicate.
again. So, I think it's essential to qualify for this World Cup for two reasons. One's a sporting perspective, and then there's an emotional perspective. The sporting perspective is quite simple. The system itself can't withstand missing another World Cup. Italian football economy loses more than 500 million euros for not qualifying to the World Cup. And then from an emotional standpoint, it's quite deep because only we as Azzurri fans know what a World Cup in the United States means, represents, because we grew up hearing this story that our fathers told us about Baggio's 1994 World Cup, how it ended, and this feels like a redemption for us. For the ones who witnessed it, I mean, 1999, I obviously didn't see it, but we were we heard that story so much that it lives in the back of our minds, like if we actually witnessed it. So yeah, it feels like a redemption, and because Baggio is a very beloved figure in Italian football, and because maybe that performance was the best individual performance ever from an Italian footballer in a World Cup, alongside Paolo Rossi in 1982. And then there's the fact that there's a large Italian community in North America, cities like Toronto, New York City, that are the two cities with the largest Italian community in the world outside of Italy. And there's a moment they have been waiting for since the venue was released 7 8 years ago. So it's something, it's a must, for to qualify. I don't know how you see it.
No, must. No excuses now, but also, unfortunately, I hate to say this, but very little confidence because the last years have not given us anything to hold hope to. I understand certainly the emotional side from those big Italian communities, and I can relate in Australia where I come from, big Italian community. I know what that would mean.
We develop a very strong, all of us that were born and raised outside
Maintain that
Italy.
attachment, that connection. It's something truly unique, and I've seen it with smaller populations of Italians. I was at South Africa and Brazil, and obviously the last couple, Russia, Qatar, and Italy in a World Cup. Every fan says the last two World Cups where Italy were not there. Even other fans of other countries,
It's not
man,
the
no, a
same.
World Cup without Italy is not a World
Yeah,
Cup.
World Cup. So,
I don't want to hear that again. It's very frustrating. But I think from an emotional level to another level, it's this. I've been here living in Italy now the last 6 7 years, and I look around. I've got young cousins, young family, and just people I meet, young families. Any children who are under the age of 15 have no World Cup memory. They have no World Cup memory. They were, let's say, someone born in 2010, so they were 4 years old in Brazil. They don't remember the Brazil World Cup. So I grew up on the other side of the world with my big Italian family, with my big Italian community, and my whole childhood I remember by World Cups. It gives me a sense of belonging, also perspective, time and connection, and it's something which was just so special that I didn't realize at the time. It's why I do what I do. It's why my grandparents particularly instilled my love for culture, for the Azzurri, the national team, because we did this together. And it's, yes, I always have this discussion with Serie A fans. Yeah, you can love your club, I understand, but the national team, especially for Italians around the world, is something so much more
it
meaningful.
means exactly.
And if we miss this World Cup, it means from 2014 to 2030, if we make it there, that we would not have played in a World Cup. Now we're talking 2 decades, 16 years between World Cups, but 2 decades of a generation, effectively 1.5 generation of human has missed that. And here in Italy, you feel it now in a way that kids growing up do not have that same passion for culture. They haven't lived it. They haven't seen it at that level. They haven't. It's not even about success. It's being at the party. It's being important. It's the national anthem. It's the celebration. It's the fandom. It's the color. It's the build-up. They've missed all of that. And that has ramifications on participation, desire to play, desire to become a professional. Once upon a time, every child in Italy wanted to be a calciatore, a calciatrice. They want to play football. Nowadays, that feeling is different. I don't see so many, even in Sicily, where my family originated from, I don't see so many kids in the streets playing with balls, kicking around. It's not in front of your face 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So failing to make the World Cup, yes, has its financial problems. And yes, Italian football, and I'm a big advocate for this, is connected from the top to the bottom to both sides. Serie A, the clubs, the national team, the federation, it's all one. So if one fails, we all fail. And that's why everything together must grow. But this is the most important element to grow. Also for our players, the opportunity to perform on the global stage, make a name for yourself. As Calafiori did in the Euros, we need more of this at the highest level against the world's best nations when the world's eyeballs are on. We need to be there. If we don't, I, I said this before we lost to Sweden, before we lost to North Macedonia, if we don't make this, it will be a disaster. I can't believe we're saying this again for a third straight World Cup, but if we don't make this, 16 years without a World Cup is a total disaster.
Now that you touched the last two playoffs, I want to stay optimistic, and I really believe
Me too.
there's a difference between these playoffs and with the last two. I don't want to get into the 2018 favor. Why? Because I actually believe Italian football at that moment needed that slap in the face. I think so, and I genuinely believe as well we wouldn't have won the Euros in 2021 if that failure didn't happen. Like everything went connected. My ramarico, my regret, I think is the word, comes from the last qualifying campaign.
The worst match I've ever been pitch side at in terms of covering, could not believe the
No,
North Macedonia match.
I think the problem came here. I think we missed it because of three mental mistakes. The first one, our arrogance, the belief that because we're Italy, because we're the reigning European champions, because we're a four-time world champion, it was impossible to miss two World Cups in a row. Okay, last addition was an accident. The other it was a mistake and not a mistake at the same time. You can't deny the fact that being at a playoff for two times in a row, and dealing with the pressure that the Italy jersey possessed itself, being the actual Euro champions, and being in that situation because of missed penalty, that's very hard to digest for the players. And then the third mistake
Two
was
missed penalties.
two missed penalties against your direct rival. You needed one. And that mentally, if it affects me as a fan, now imagine the players. And then the last mental mistake definitely was approaching the match against North Macedonia, already thinking about the final against
Portugal.
Portugal. Then I think this time is different. Why? Because we already knew since June we were directly
Yes,
to the
yes, yes.
playoffs. Then Gattuso gets the job with the awareness of what was coming, and this last games were basically a preparation for the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Mentally, tactically, I think it's very hard for a coach to put his tactical work in some little time. But the thing is, so I don't think the same mistakes will be repeated. I think Gattuso is not the best coach in the world tactically, but the guy is a motivator. The players follow him, and I think he can handle the situation. Like I think the key is not like losing the la paura to the not being scared of failure.
Sure.
That's the thing.
Agreed, absolutely agreed. And I don't think Gattuso was hired for his tactical ability. I think he was hired for his grinta that he showed as a player, to bring that to the players. They need to bleed for the shirt. They need to leave everything out there. And exactly right, they cannot have fear of failure. There is no room for fear of failure. I think the pressure will be on because the players know what is at stake. The country's already feeling it. With respect to the opponents, though, you're right. This time around, okay, North Macedonia, not a top opponent, but there was Portugal awaiting. This time around, okay, Northern Ireland,
At home.
Wales or Bosnia away. You should be winning these matches. There's no excuse. Gattuso, no Gattuso, me coach, you coach. We should be winning these matches. With respect to our friends in those countries, we are still Italy. But what will the mental state be going in? Because the pressure of that fear of failure Can they manage that? Can Gattuso manage that? Did we show enough in the last qualifiers where, yes, you're right, we knew we were heading to the playoffs. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I would have liked to have seen a bit more risk taken from Gattuso in terms of personnel. We just stuck a little bit too much with the old guard. Now, you didn't make many changes in terms of personnel. There were no real risks in terms of squad selection. There were some really good younger players playing abroad. We didn't call them. You're not going to bring them in now for the playoffs because that would be ridiculous. They've not played. So we've got the squad that we've got, and most have had very solid careers. But are they the right players at this time in a match like this? Northern Ireland will come to Bergamo knowing we are fragile, knowing we are there for the taking, with nothing to lose. Keep in mind, the last time we played Northern Ireland was only a few years ago when we were qualifying for the World Cup, 0-0 in Belfast. And that game, if we, you remember,
If we would have,
if we would have won,
won it,
we
yeah.
got to the World Cup as well. So not only did we miss a penalty in Switzerland, not only did we miss a penalty in Rome against Switzerland home and away, but then we drew 0-0 with them there. And Switzerland won 4-0 the same night against Bulgaria. And we don't go through. So they've already played us in a high pressure moment only 4 years ago. So it's not going to be a team that's going to be easy. And they know that if they can stick in the game, they'll have their game plan. So it's not going to be easy. I mentioned earlier Chiesa, a player who can break the lines, get in behind, have that spark.
People are calling Berardi too. People are calling.
Well, he just injured himself the other day. Hopefully not too long, Berardi. But the point is, we don't have a top player in that role that could, if they sit back, play with a back five, we need to break that. We need to get through. We couldn't score against Moldova. We scored 2 goals against Moldova in the 90th minute to win 2-0. Again, respect Moldova, but I'm talking levels here. Northern Ireland will come. They're in a playoff as well. They're in the playoff by merit. They've done enough to do what's required to get there. So they're not going to be an easy beat. We'll win. We're going to win. We'll win. But do we have enough runs on the board now to win 2 games in 3 days, the second one being away from home? That's where I am optimistic. I'm being realistic by saying I just don't feel we've shown enough to say you're guaranteed this will be a walk in the park. These players will take control. And also our best players of the last couple of years are not in top form. And there's a lot of time to go, but we do need to see improvements across the board. But Gattuso now has no time. He has 1 week before that first game, and that's it. So Gattuso's work is now done. It's all up to the clubs. Make sure the players are right. They're focusing on their own competitions, though. But we need our players to be in tip-top condition ahead of those playoffs in March, which I'm excited for. But also there's that little sick feeling in the stomach, which I want them over with as soon as possible.
Definitely. And one last question. This one kind of tough, kind of, for you. Was it a penalty from Lucas Neal on Grosso?
Sí.
Okay, so then Adriano, that's it. So yeah, thanks again for having me.
Big pleasure.
It's a real pleasure to be here, as I said, and yeah, I hope to one day, I don't know, be a journalist like you and maybe work together for some coverage or something.
Will be a big pleasure. Will be a big pleasure. We'll keep in touch, keep doing fantastic work, and then we'll speak again very soon.
Thank you, and Forza Italia, Sam.
Forza Italia.